section about examples of behaviors, misrepresenting, I would say, who you are online. Identity is kind of an abstract concept.
For kids, yeah.
I just thought that would play a little bit better. It's just a suggestion. And it's
Okay, all right.
who you are online. And also the disseminating word, I didn't know what that meant until after high school, so distributing or something. The intent is, sending around
Yeah.
or commenting and posting. So, and also I didn't know if any mention could be made of audio files of some sort, because photos and images and messages are really more tangible than
Oh, yeah, you could put
orally
audio, that's
communicated
right.
messages. So
You could put an
anything
audio file, yeah.
radio. And other than that, I was really impressed that you took this on. It reads
Good.
really nicely, and it spells it out.
Yeah,
Great job.
it's great.
Again, continuing, we wanted to take a crack at the a definition for cyberbullying as well as hostile environment. Again, these couple of terms obviously are coming up more and more in the literature and the legislation, and so we wanted to at least get those in there so that as we introduce our handbook to our students, we can take the opportunity to talk about those various aspects of harassment and bullying.
John, I would kind of make, just looking at the under hostile environment, again, some of the comments that Karen just made in terms of if you can make it a little more kid-friendly in the language, like permeated, and, maybe make it so kids can get a better understanding of it. There's probably a couple words and you can change. The intention is right on, but just maybe a little wording.
It's my English major, and really,
Is that the problem?
it's- yeah.
Okay.
Well, uncomfortable is really the word that we use a lot, and the work that I've done to
Uncomfortable.
describe these concepts. Uncomfortable, or constant, consistent feeling of being surrounded by bad feelings or vibes. I mean, that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
Good.
I love the word permeate, though. I do.
That's a good word.
Moving into our cell phones, electronic devices, again, we make it pretty clear, actually, I think we make it absolutely clear that our expectation is that students who choose to bring electronic device cell phones to school, turn them off and leave them in their lockers all day is our rule. Our belief is that turn them off and carry them around, the temptation is just too great. They have it in their pocket, they have a little free time in the hallway, the lunchroom. It's just, temptation is too great. So we've asked them to put them in the locker. Of course, we supply students with locks for all the lockers and whatnot. In our experience last year, when we introduced this rule, we are now under the impression that the actual consequences that we built in originally are just not serious enough to get their attention until they really get caught 4 or 5 times. So we've decided that we would like to up the ante a little bit. There's probably no rule discussed because the kids have a great interest in this rule. So we talk about it and it's pretty clear. So what we've decided to do is just try to up the offense. So the first time you get caught with your cell phone in your possession during school, you can, it'll be confiscated, it'll be returned to you at the end of the day. It'll probably be a conversation with your parent, but you can expect that you'll walk away with an office detention or 2, or perhaps even 3, depending on the circumstances. Repeated offenses from that point could include additional consequences up into and including possible suspension from school. So we're trying to make it clear, we're trying to be fair, we really spend a lot of time talking about this, we give a lot of fair warning, but unfortunately we lived through a couple of situations that, again, getting into bullying and such, where cell phones were misused, photographs taken in school and those kind of things. So we believe that we really have to be pretty clear and, up the ante as far as the consequences go.
I'm just a little, I understand exactly what you're doing. I'm a little concerned about the wording because it's so unspecific. I mean, you probably intentionally made it unspecific, but when you say, I guess we're basically leaving it at your team's discretion, right? Because, repeated offenses, if a kid on a second time it's the same thing he did, that he just forgot to take it out of his pocket or whatever,
Right.
versus a kid intentionally, making phone calls in the boys' room or the girls' room or whatever. It's two different things, right? I guess there's really no way to spell it out because you'd have to list 1,000 different circumstances to.
Again, we
This
up
is-
above in the original language, of course, the second time, you're given one detention. Now, that's so clear, it boxes us into the point where if it was a significant offense, actually having it out in texting or, doing something that he really shouldn't be doing, we're now boxed into, it's a slap, you get a 30-minute office detention and you're never to do this again. The third one, offense
Right.
in the original language is that, again, we've talked to you, third time, you still have it out, you're doing things you're not supposed to be doing. This is not, obviously, we're pretty reasonable people. If it spills out of his locker when they're trying to get a book out, that's a different story. I
Right.
mean, but, we're talking about a situation where it's out in class and they're texting or whatever they're doing with it. Under the old language, we were forever giving out office detentions.
But this is experience-based.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm just wondering if in that second offense or in a repeated offense, whereas on second or third offense, you did mention specifically detention. So did you say something like for repeated offenses, a minimum of, 2, 3 office detentions up to possible suspension? I'm just wondering if you should, because you don't say anything about detentions at all in the repeat offense, and I think you should mention detentions in there.
J-
Jerry?
John, I noticed in the old policy that you used in parentheses the word insubordination.
All right, I
Is
saw
that a basis for suspension in the handbook already?
It is.
So I'm just wondering if you actually included that in the new repeated offenses insubordination, then the suspension would be based on whether or not the violation rose to the level of insubordination. So it would give you that discretion.
That's actually a good suggestion because it does, the term insubordination clearly connects to a suspendable offense.
Right, and that way, if the repeated offenses were of the nature that would warrant constitute insubordination, then it would warrant a suspension.
So what I think we'll do is, based on your suggestions here, we'll go with a second offense, which will contain language that will be worded around minimum of 3 office detentions,
I mean, repeated offense.
and then perhaps the third, instead of a third,
Okay.
then the repeated offense where we get to the level of insubordination suspension.
So second would be a minimum of 3 detentions. I think that's
You all right
a
with
pretty hefty penalty.
My second offense would be the 3 detentions and smash the phone against the wall, but.
Michael?
We need to expand the list of items.
That's why we took it out.
John?
Yep.
Michael has a question.
I'm sorry.
I feel like, do we need to expand the list of items? You don't have handheld video games in there or digital handheld video cameras that are
Good
pretty
That's
small.
actually a good point. The video cameras is real. They get those flip video
Miles
cameras
and
now.
Things like that, yeah.
Well, again, we have cell phone / electronic devices. Obviously, used to raise CD players. Of course, I'm a little behind the times here. The iPods. But you're right. There are other.
Those little, I think that you should spell out those handheld, the video
Well,
cameras, because
the-
those are
all
quite,
the video game systems now
Right.
have cameras on them too. Handheld video games.
right,
And the other
handheld
thing
video
is,
games. And
what happens if a child wants to bring an iPad into class and take notes on it?
We had
Would
the
you not-
the Kindle. That was brought to us.
I
and
want one of those.
we, again, child was MCAS testing. We tell them to bring a book to class so that they finish the
Yeah.
testing. I have a Kindle. So, again, I had her bring it in. She gave us a little demonstration, and it was okay.
But what if that's a good question. If a student wanted to bring
A laptop.
a laptop to school, is that allowed?
I think we would allow that, yeah. Again,
Then an iPad would be allowed, but not a handheld video game system
Right.
or cameras.
Patrick?
If I may, this is an issue going forward. I mean, the kids have $200 computers in their pockets that we're
Right.
not letting them use. I mean,
Right.
and this is becoming more and more of an issue. Before that can happen, even with an iPad, with anything, there's lots of things that need to be in place.
Need a
The
policy.
technology, the wireless needs to be in place.
Right.
We're now talking about kids getting access, how they're going to get to the internet or how they're going to interact. There's classroom management issues that need to be addressed first. So I think that definitely is coming. It's going to be pretty much 5-10 years I can see this happening, but a lot of things need to happen before we can get to that point. So I would still think at this time, even an iPad, even a cell phone that has internet capabilities, not letting that happen until all those other things are in place.
Because it could cause disruption in the class.
Agreed.
It's
right?
too disruptive at this time. But
And if the student is able to access someone else's wireless or our wireless,
How
or
about having them bring a notebook and a pencil, all right?
Well, I think
Seriously.
then you have to include the Kindle. The brand new Kindle has actually expanded its capabilities.
Right, the new
It
Kindle.
just came out.
Yeah.
So I think you have to include that as one of the items that you're going to exclude.
Electronic.
Can this read, including but not limited to?
Right,
language?
exactly.
Something
Electronic
like
Yeah,
that.
my issue is I
I
think
like
you have
that
to spell it out,
phraseology.
especially
You
to the
think so?
boys. I really do.
I'd
I
spell
think,
out
like,
some more of the. I'd spell out some
those
more of the
video
items.
games and
Yeah.
I would.
Just a recommendation.
There's
But
no
I
way
like-
for you to keep up with the electronic
No.
business.
That including
No,
but not
there
limited
isn't.
to.
But I think
There's no way.
I like that.
Violating
including but not
policy
Right.
right now.
Including but not limited to.
Mine's already buzzed a couple times. too, so.
Mine has too, but I'm not looking at it.
If I may just ask, does putting insubordinate, the reason why insubordination came out was because there are other reasons that could be suspendable offenses, including if it's used for bullying, if it's used for cheating. So that was why we just said suspension, but linking it to one could work as well. I just wanted to put that forward.
If insubordination limits you, then I would
Yeah, if it
not
limits
put
you,
it
I
in.
wouldn't, yeah.
Because if, as you say, cheating or other things,
Because if a student uses their cell phone
to send a text
cheat,
message
or
right to someone
that's-
else, and
that's
right.
more severe than a kid finding out about a ride or
Right.
something like that. So
Right.
that's,
Which
read
hat
that
are
out?
you wearing at this moment?
Yeah, wait.
Going forward, this is.
I think
this
he's
is
still
a-
wearing the assistant principal hat right now.
But going forward, this is a very serious issue for
Right. This
you.
is going to be, I think, one of the big issues that you tackle in your new position is the whole technology policy, and that's right. What
I don't
we do.
care what
with
hat he's wearing, we're not paying him twice, right?
Don't listen to Mr. Venezia.
Right.
That's the only advice I can give.
it. So a lot of input there, but mostly we're saying
That's
fine,
right.
but maybe expand
Yeah,
the definitions a little.
We'll go back
and-
and take some of the suggestions, absolutely. On the dress code, once upon a time, we said the athletic shorts may be appropriate for the classroom, not appropriate, excuse me, for the classroom. And it dawned on us, well, if it's not appropriate for the classroom, why is it appropriate in the gym classroom? So we just struck that language out of our handbook.
And most of the boys that wear they're down below their knees, reaching toward their ankles, so I don't think we have any issue with length or anything.
I've got to say, coming from where I did and going to middle school in the 60s, I never thought we'd have to have a policy about not wearing pajamas and slippers to school, but it's in there, and it's just, it's unbelievable.
Well, you know, Mr. Venezia, that at
unbelievable.
Wellesley College, I wore my pajamas and curlers in my hair.
Well, that's
I think
college.
that says a lot about Wellesley College.
Look how well I turned out.
But I just,
Really, as we flush out the language and anything we do, they really, when you get into these kind of, as you know, you get into situations, they really learn from very specific. It didn't say pajamas, it didn't say, so we have to add it.
and when you have detail like this, it's usually because of something that happened that
Right.
you had to include it in here. That's, you know,
Again, when we deal with students who are inappropriately dressed for school, we kind of start with the guidance counselors and an educational opportunity, and we try to talk to them and bring the parents on board, and that generally might include asking them to bring clothing in, but since we didn't have that language in our handbook, a couple of times we got challenged, so we would like to add the language that says, students who are in violation of our dress code will be asked to change. Parents may be asked to, bring an alternative attire.
It's reasonable.
We just have to do that. And under suspension from school, we added some other clarification, language to clarify, uninvited touching. Even when people feel like they're just fooling around, we had some episodes with some punching games, and we're just fooling around, so we have to put that in there. The idea of pantsing and other indecent exposure to self or others, again.
I learned a new
really-
word.
We had to be very, 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 very clear about that.
Wow, okay.
you didn't have pantsing at Wellesley College?
No, it was all girls' school.
It's not
Okay.
girls'
We
they
didn't
don't-
do that. We
yeah.
just walked around the way we wanted to.
That was a form of, sexual harassment, so
Right.
we really have to be.
Yep.
And then, along the lines of the electronic, along the bullying, actually, making a false accusation of bullying. Again, we wanna make sure we have language in there, because that's really coming out in the new legislation as well. forgery is self-explanatory. So, I mean, that's really